mate? You all right?
Not so bad. Not so bad. This is one we're going to try and turn this around quickly. Hopefully, if you're watching this when it first goes up, it should be on Christmas Eve. That's when I'm hoping to get this one up.
Yeah, does that work?
There we go. The perfect. I don't have anything Christmas. Oh, yeah, that's the most Christmassy thing I've got. I'll put that there. Right.
That works, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can't stay there though, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'll crick my neck. How are you?
But yeah, I'm festive. How are you?
I'm festive as well. I must admit, this morning I woke up feeling rather Christmassy.
Oh.
So I must admit, so everything's really cool on that side of things.
Is that a euphemism where you're trying to say that you've got a full sack and you're wanting to empty it for the children, or is it something different to that?
When that sentence started, the response that came into my head was, I wish it was. But by the time you finished that sentence, that was not an appropriate response.
I'm taking that off. My head's fucking sweating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be hot in there, isn't it?
Yeah, it bloody is.
Look, today we're talking about the Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. Anyway,
yes.
So we can't get any more festive than that, really, can we?
Christmas Carol from Charles Dickens, who shares your initials.
He does.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I never realised that.
Yeah, shares your initials. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, as I was reading the preface and it signed its CD, I was thinking, fucking hell, Colin's been here already. Yeah.
I wish. Who's going to do the premise?
Do you want me to?
You do the premise. Come on. It's Christmas.
Right. So, Christmas Carol. So what happens is Kermit the Frog is working for the guy from the Italian Job, and I'll start again. So what happens is Ebenezer Scrooge is a miserable twat. He doesn't like partying with money. He's very, very horrible to everybody. And then he gets visited by the ghost of his dead partner, Marley, who says you're going to be visited by three ghosts, ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And these ghosts come and they show Scrooge what a twat he was in the past, what a twat he is nowadays, and how shit life's going to be in the future when he's dead. Which to my mind, isn't really that big a concern, but hey-ho. Scrooge looks at these things, digests them all, and thinks that he's going to live a better life and starts squandering his money as though he's stupid. Yeah, it's a very wholesome and depressing story if you're a capitalist. Is that a fair summary? Have I missed anything out there?
I don't think you've gone and made a misstep with that summary at all. It is probably one of the most recognizable stories in the world ever. I would actually go as far as saying if you did a poll of the world of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and any of the Bible stories that isn't just the birth of Jesus Christmas based one, you will find more people know A Christmas Carol than anything out of the Bible.
I think you're absolutely right there. I think that's. I'm trying to get the screen to go bigger now.
And I won't say that about all stories, actually, because I think there's a lot of stories that we know, but as you travel around the world, or as we know growing older, as we are doing, how many stories and films from like the 1980s are now not seen by people, just like 30 and 40 years later. So to say that something is it even Dracula, I would go as far as saying is, the majority of the people that you would speak to about Dracula or Frankenstein don't know the true story from the original book.
I was just looking. When you mentioned about its popularity in 2003, the BBC did a poll, the top 100 books, the nation's favourite books, and Christmas Carol comes in at number 47 on that. Which, given the way these lists are set out, the fact that you've got some things in there, such as the Harry Potter stories, which are good, and I've got no problems with them, but the fact that you've got three in there, it's all dependent on the time that this list was published. As I say,
it's a generational thing, isn't it?
But yeah, the fact that A Christmas Carol is sort of like sitting in there 150 years after it was originally published says quite a lot about it, really.
Yeah, and also I think it's one of the reasons it's endured so long is that the adaptations of it are so faithful to the actual text.
Yeah.
You know, I read it last week, and even this morning, I woke up this morning and I thought, I can't be asked getting out of bed this morning. It's getting close to Christmas. And I asked my Amazon-based device to read me the Christmas
You
Carol.
dare fucking say it, dare you? You dare say a name
because it will go off somewhere in the house. I've got so many of them. Yeah, basically, Alexa attaches to my Kindle. I have Christmas Carol on Kindle. I asked it to read it. It read it to me this morning whilst I was lying in bed, and it was bloody wonderful.
It really is damn good, yeah. Yeah, it's a good, moral and wholesome story. And having sort of like read it 3 or 4 times this week, I have come away from it thinking the ghosts did him an injustice. He was content with what he was doing. He was content. He was building up his fortune, and then they get him involved in sort of like cripple kids. They get him sort of like feeding people who should be feeding their fucking selves. They get him doing these dodgy practices with, you know, oh, have another day off and all of the rest of this. And yeah, why?
You try and wear a Tory badge. You really do. It doesn't suit you at all. I can see. I can see you trying it. I can see you doing it. I think it's a really clever. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, it's one of those kind of like almost hypocrisy, isn't it? Really, because he wrote it to make money. He wrote it purely to be capitalist about it.
Yeah,
you know, it wasn't written from a point of view of trying to teach people about charity. It was written purely that he wanted to make money. It had a couple of misfires in the novel department, needed to earn some cash, so decided to write a Christmas story, which nobody else had been doing at that point. But he loved Christmas, so he went for it. And then had an instant hit on his hands when he did it. I mean, what was it, 1843, isn't it? It was published.
Yeah.
And it was actually published on Christmas Eve, I think is when it came out. It actually came out on the 24th of December. Because there was a review of it in the newspaper for the 25th of December, because they still used to print newspapers on Christmas Day, because nobody celebrated Christmas in the way that we do now. And the Christmas Carol has done so much for that in the way that it's done. And I think what we need to look at is how, as a book like that, had such a massive impact and continue to have such an impact, you know, all these years afterwards. And how does it make such faithful adaptations on the screen? Every adaptation that's of it, even when you watch Scrooged, it's still so
that is
faithful.
One of my favorites.
I love Scrooge. There's Scrooge, Muppet Christmas Carol, you know, there's the Christmas Carol starring George C. Scott, which was filmed in Shrewsbury, and you know, the old black and white one, which is creepy as, you know, and it should be on any horror double bill, you know, because it's scary. It created the tradition of telling ghost stories on a Christmas, which Mark Gatiss now does with M.R. James stories. And it spawned all of this, you know, and continues to inform and inspire. How the hell does it do it?
I suppose it's touching on some relatively universal truths, isn't it? This whole notion that our past lives have impacted us so strongly, and that, I don't know, I mean, you're saying that I was trying to play the Tory before. I was absolutely being genuine. I mean, anybody who sort of like watches this and doesn't know you and I ordinarily, if you don't know us ordinarily, you should be aware that Colin is one of the nicest people that you're ever likely to meet. Yeah. And I am one of the biggest cunts you're ever likely to meet. And I think this was evidenced when we were last in Manchester, which was a few years back now. But we'd just finished at a poetry event. We were walking the streets and there were some homeless people, and Colin was stopping and talking to each one of the homeless people that was asking him for money. And the only words I was exchanging with the homeless people were, fuck off, it's my money, and you're not having it. But yeah, he was sort of like there and being decent and absolutely lovely. Whereas so yeah, you can sort of like see Colin in the spirit of a changed Scrooge, although I don't think he's had to change. Whereas I'm still waiting for those 3 ghosts to sort of like come and tell me to get my fucking arse in gear.
So what you're basically looking at here is, because, you know, it's you know, on the screen right now, You'll be seeing Ashley on the left and me on the right. If I can put a filter on at some point on this to turn you black and white, we can make you the before and after pictures of a Scrooge diet.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. Which one was it after? Are you after?
That's what you're saying. That's what you were just saying. Is before the revelations, after the revelations.
It's. I mean, he touches on universal truths, doesn't he? The fact that we're all shaped by the past that we've had, and the past that we've had for all of us has been shit.
And we forget as well that, because one of the things I think he brings up. Let's start with the ghost of Christmas past.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start there. As you were just saying, we're all shaped by our past. We are all the products of our past, no matter what. Whether it's positive or negative, our past always has an impact on what we do now. But one of the interesting things, I think, going back over the Christmas Carol again, is part of that is forgetting things in your past, forgetting how much fun you had when you were a kid. It's easy to look back and go, oh, God, it was awful when I was a kid. Oh, I grew up on a council estate and, we only had 17 shoes and 4 tallies. It was terrible. It was like poverty,
Yeah.
But you look back and you see all the negatives. And then when you really, really think about it, you think, though actually, climbing in that abandoned fridge was actually really good fun. And you suddenly go
Don't do that at home, kids. Yeah.
No, always do it on a piece of wasteland where nobody can find you.
Don't. Yeah.
But it is, we've all been, doing stuff as kids that you think back and think, oh my God, we had such a deprived or whatever type of childhood, and one of the D childhoods. But you think back and you think, oh my God, in between all the bad stuff, there was huge amounts of fun, huge amounts of laughing and just getting up to mischief and doing that sort of stuff. And that happened.
But don't you think Dickens sort of like frames it though? So we get and this part was fun and this part was fun, but there's an awful lot of shit that's been going on in the background that he's sort of like brushing over. Poor little Ebenezer has been sort of like, when we first meet him in that first flashback, he's sort of like sitting alone and crying because he's the last one that's left at boarding school.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's fucking shitty. Poor little bastard. No wonder he grows up to be borderline serial killer, because he's had it pretty fucking rough. When we get to him working for Fezziwig, which is a stupid fucking name, I might add. But when we get to working for Fezziwig, Fezziwig says, right, put the shutters up as quickly as you can, and him and Dick, again an unusual name, go balls out, not in that way, and work really, really fast, as though they're scared of having the shit kicked out of them if they don't do it. Fezziwig does it great on Christmas Day, great Christmas party, but what's got them so fucking terrified that they're running around like blue-arsed flies as soon as he sort of like raises a finger?
Yes, I mean, granted, all bosses were, his way of being a boss is obviously informed by being a boss. But he does forget the idea of joy within that. Yes, his boss is an absolute bellend, obviously, throughout the year. He's obviously pushing people harder than they should be pushed, which is that capitalist idea. And it's almost like sitting there going, okay, look, you've got a choice. You have this character that you're looking up to because that's who you're working for. They have this, when they go for it in a jolly kind of way, they are very, very jolly. And when they go for it in a non-jolly kind of way, to be, to what they consider to be successful, they're tyrants with the whip. And I think what Dickens was doing, because Dickens had a really hard upbringing, didn't he? When he was 12, his dad got put in a debtor's prison, and he had to go and work in a factory. I think it was a waterproofing factory, wasn't it? It was black tarring shoes, and it was like, so it was really horrible, dirty work. Just to try. Does
he still do it? Because I've got a pair of shoes that need some.
Oh, it must have been awful type stuff. But of course, he came from a point where his dad kept telling him he was a gentleman because his dad was effectively a con man. And so, to have that kind of looking back, and instead of kind of going, okay, I'm going to be just like him and be jolly in this, he chose one attribute of someone from his past and focused on that to grow up and, that's how you become successful in business and forget the party stuff.
Do you think that rather than Scrooge being swayed because he wants to do better for characters like Tiny Tim and make everybody happy, that the reality is Scrooge only changes because he's worried about the punishment he's going to suffer.
Oh yes, yeah. I think that's a big thing from it. It's not. It's what do they call it? It's not altruism. He's doing it for. It's what do they call it? Virtue signaling, isn't it? What they call it nowadays. That's very much that. Becomes incredible. It's like you see it with the latest billionaires with like Musk and Benzo and whatever, or Gonzo and Amazon. Is that whole kind of thing of and Bill Gates does it as well. I'm going to give away all my billions. Yeah, you're not really. It's that. Yeah. You look at Michael Sheen, isn't it? Michael Sheen, the Welsh actor, brilliant actor. He seems to have done it the right way, where he suddenly realised, actually, he earns a lot of money, so he just makes it. Basically, has gone non-profit actor, is what he calls himself. He earns, and as long as he keeps earning, everything's fine. So he takes out what he needs, and everything, absolutely everything else, goes into projects, charity, all that kind of stuff. He only takes out of his earnings what he needs.
Or a decent bloke.
Yeah, really amazing guy. But people like Benzo and all that kind of stuff, Benzonine or whatever he's called, they kind of go, oh no, I'm a billionaire, and I'm going to take 50 million of my billions and put it into a bank for people to be able to spend the interest.
Yeah,
it's still very good from a charity point of view. People are still benefiting out of it, but it's not. It's virtue signaling rather than being virtuous.
Yeah, and I suppose that's one of my worries with Scrooge: the fact that he's got punishment hanging over him, and it's to try and avoid that punishment, to try and lessen that punishment, that he changes his ways. He's not doing it, although we are given the impression he's doing it to make Tiny Tim have a better life. Really, he's doing it so that Scrooge has got a better afterlife.
Well, I'm going to agree partly with that, but there is a little part of me that kind of goes, there's something that Charles Dickens does, which I think is really, really clever. Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of falls in line with Field's, what do they call him? Paradigms.
Oh, Sid Field paradigms. Yeah.
Because if you actually look at, it's about halfway through the Ghost of Christmas Present that he changes. He hasn't been threatened at this point, apart from, Marley comes along and says, this is the future that waits for you, listen to the ghosts. But it's not the Ghost of Christmas future, or Ghost of Christmas is yet to come, that sways Scrooge. Scrooge starts changing halfway through the second Ghost. When he gets to Cratchit's house, he hears people mocking him and all that kind of stuff. And he's kind of fronting it off a little bit. But he sees Tiny Tim, and then the Ghost of Christmas Present says, I see an empty chair by the fire. And that's when he starts to switch. So it's kind of like the midpoint in Act 2, where that particular change happens. And so, I thought that was quite interesting the way he did that.
I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, have we got a time check on where we are at the moment, just in case I'm about to say something incredibly controversial and you think, we need to cut that part out?
It's all right, don't worry, I'll go through others. Go on, what's your controversy?
Do we think Ebenezer Scrooge might have been a bit of a nonce? It's just that he gets all excited. I mean, he's a little bit Michael Jackson in this. He gets all excited by the cripple boy who's got the tiny crutch, and he's sort of like there going, can't wait to get my hands on him. Are you saying that
the tiny crutch might be a metaphor for a tiny crutch? Is that what you're saying?
It's a very thinly veiled tiny crutch metaphor, isn't it? Yeah, his motive that he's sort of like is focused on wanting to do right by Tiny Tim, and then the first person he speaks to when he wakes up on Christmas morning is, "Hey, you boy, go and get me a goose." Which, if we're all aware of it, goose is sort of like a sexual practice.
It's a turkey. Let's get this right. It's a turkey. The Cratchits are eating a goose because that's the poor person's fowl, and then he orders a turkey freshly in from the Americas.
Sorry, and turkeys, yes, with the phrase "gobble gobble." There's nothing, sexually, suggestive about turkeys. But he sort of like says, "Oh, hey boy," which again, sort of like, "Boy, hey boy, get me the turkey." And the boy says, "What? The one that says big as me?" I don't know what part of his anatomy he's sort of like pointing at there, where he's sort of like saying the one that's as big as me. But yeah, and also last turkey in the shop. Again, this is another euphemism. I'm thinking there is sort of like a bit of a noncy feel to Ebenezer.
I think could you argue that? I think putting the voice on it, if you actually change the voice to the one that you did, no, not Tiny Tim. Oh no, not him. Oh, he must be saved. You know, if you did that kind of thing, then yeah.
God bless Tiny Tim.
Creepy. No, I'm not going to go with that one. But mind you, we have the same argument about Lewis Carroll, who was a nonce. But
yeah,
you know, but I think it's one of those really weird ones, isn't it? I think that's why it works so well in a funny sort of way, is the fact that actually it genuinely doesn't feel like it's full of sexual repression and all this kind of stuff. It's just a really linear, but what we would call nowadays a by the numbers story. It hits markers all the way through, and you can do. I mean, say the best adaptation of it is probably Muppets Christmas Carol. You know, they do the mockery of it because if you get something that is true class, you should be able to mock it really easily. You know, because you should be able to get those, like you just done there, you know, with the turkey at the end, and you should be able to get those moments and twist them slightly and turn them into whatever you want. You can't always do that. We tried it with the Castle of, or whatever his face was, the Castle of Oreo, right?
Yep.
And we kept trying to really mock it. And the trouble was, it was so bad that you couldn't get your hands around it to completely mock it. Whereas this, you could rip this to pieces in a mockery kind of way. You know, you could turn the whole thing. I mean, let's face it, the Ghost of Christmas Present is a big butch. He's a bear, isn't he? Basically, he's a bear from the LGBTQXZ community, right? And he's just and he changes his size wherever he goes. So he's always the biggest man in the room. You know, he's always kind of like that. And if you put a camp voice on him when you're reading it, it becomes hysterical. You know, even when he's doing the whole thing about these are mans. You know, this is ignorance and this is want. It just changes the whole thing. But it's just, you know, because it's so cleverly done.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful story, and I can't believe. I mean, I've seen all the films before, but this is probably the first time that I've actually sat down and read it. And yeah, it was just such a fucking delight. It's but so
wasn't it
well
like
structured.
Reading the script to one of the films? This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think I can recall another story where the adaptation on film is absolute beat for beat for the original text.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's it's one. Now I was going to say Dracula, but no, Dracula. They go all over the place with that one. Yep. Mainly because Bram Stoker got all over the place with that one as well.
He'd lost the plot at one point. You know, tried to scramble around to find another one.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, on that list that I was just looking at, I noticed that Gone with the Wind was on there, and Gone with the Wind's one of my favourite novels. But even with that, they miss out huge parts. I think they'd missed out huge parts just to be politically correct with it, because it talks about how the KKK were founded, and it was bad enough what they were doing.
Bloody long film anyway, wasn't it? You know.
Yeah, it really was. It's got Lord of the Rings. Is that anything like the books?
No, it's better than the books. Hell of a lot better than the books.
Couldn't be worse. Yeah. It could not be worse.
They cut massive bits out in every single adaptation of Lord of the Rings, including the radio adaptation of Lord of the Rings from the BBC from about 1979, I think it was. They cut out a whole scene with a character called Tom Bombadil, because it's not a very good scene. You know, it's not a very good chapter.
Fuck me, if that was the criterion for anything that was in there, in that case, it'd be half an hour long.
Genuinely bad. I mean, it's so bad that Leonard Nimoy actually did a single about Tom Bombadil called The Ballad of Tom Bombadil, which is equally as bad. I've
seen that, yes. Yeah. It made me hate Star Wars, Star Trek, Star thing. Yeah.
Watching it, it's like, what?
Yes.
Yeah. So no, they're not amazingly faithful adaptations. And even in the comic books, I mean, you know a lot on the comic book side of things. You know, when you watch things like Iron Man or you watch any of the Batmans, they're all taken inspiration from different comic book stories, but they're not really faithful adaptations into what the actual book is. They're kind of approximations or the best you can get, or it's like American Psycho, for example. The film cut huge swathes out of it because you just couldn't film what was in the book, and even
because it's unpalatable, unreadable,
and it's just unrealistic.
Because it's fucking garbage. I've said before, American Psycho. American Psycho is just a fucking Argos catalogue being read to you. It's just
Don't listen to him, listeners.
It's just
do subscribe and shit.
Yeah, but no, it's just fucking hell. It's just designer item this and this and get on with the fucking story, you wittering twat.
That's why you don't. That's why you don't write satire.
Is it satire?
Yeah, absolute satire of the 1980s. It really is. I knew people like that. When I first read American Psycho, I was working in sales, doing advertising sales, and I was down in Oxford trying to con small businesses out of money to advertise in magazines that nobody's ever going to read. And I went out for dinner with my boss and the sales manager, and I thought I was going to die that night because the conversation they had came straight out of the pages of American Psycho. So it was like, lock the door. Seriously, that world existed like that. It was that's what it was. It's a satire of the excess of that kind of horrible yuppie lifestyle in the 1980s.
Yeah, but no, it's still, I'm still never picking the fucking thing up again. I've tried reading God, I'm turning into such a whiny shit, aren't I? So, Lord of the fucking Rings, American Psycho.
Scrooge is a nonce.
Scrooge is a nonce is the only one that I've enjoyed talking about so far this evening. So I like that. I like the way that the story built. So we sort of like have the ghost of Marley at first. We've got sort of like that. Did he see it? Didn't he see it in the door knocker?
Yes.
Then we get the ghost actually coming in, which is unsettling. And then once we're into that spirit world, he sort of like wheels it back and goes, "Well, this is the pleasant ghost of Christmas past, this is all nice, and these were things that happened to you." And even the ghost of Christmas present isn't that particularly scary, but my God, the ghost of Christmas yet to come is fucking horrifying.
Yes.
But why is this horrifying? Why is it horrifying? I mean, as I said before, I think Scrooge is motivated by self-interest. The fact that when his spirit moves on into another world, that he's going to be punished for all the sins and omissions that he's made in life. So he's going to be punished. So, are you going anywhere near my Coca-Cola? Cheers. Do you want my glass? You've been fucking lazy not doing it yet. Ooh, right, that's me fucked off. So he's got all these omissions that he's sort of like made in his life, and he's scared of the punishment. But the thing that upsets him the most when he's talking to the ghost of Christmas yet to come is the fact that he's not been treated very well in death, that he's had things stolen from him, that he's not going to be wearing a nice shirt when he's buried, that there aren't going to be people there who are mourning him. Why does he give a fuck about this?
It's the legacy thing, isn't it? It's kind of like, it's not just Scrooge. What I love about the Ghost of Christmas Is Yet to Come is it's all about Scrooge, because the Ghost of Christmas Is Yet to Come says nothing. All the dialogue, all the reasoning, all the to-ing and froing is Scrooge talking to himself. It's him reasoning with himself. And I think it's where that legacy thing comes in. There's a big thing going on with that at the moment. I was talking to a record producer. Lowbrow stuff, don't get excited, it wasn't anything no one with loads of money or anything like that, but he was saying that he's getting a lot at the moment of people hiring the studio to do legacy recordings, so that at least they've got something to leave behind. And I think there's that kind of mortality thing in that.
What's a legacy recording? What's a legacy recording?
It's just basically, you're not trying to put something out for anyone to actually buy. You kind of like, you might be a half singer And so you'll record a single for the whole family to have, so that you've got something of a permanent record that you're leaving a mark. Or you might go and record some poetry, or you might go and record your story. A la The Woman in Black, you know, for the stage show of The Woman in Black, what he does is he's hired an actor in order to teach him how to tell his story to his family. They're called, you know, they're just like legacy publications or legacy recordings, and so they're just something creative and slightly artistic that you want to leave behind, that can be handed on, you know, and lost in boxes in moves and all that kind of stuff. But you feel like you've left a mark on the world, is where that kind of comes in.
So you're suggesting that Scrooge is wanting to leave some sort of legacy?
Yeah, he wants to. He suddenly dawns on. Let's roll it back and say, let's say he doesn't get visited by ghosts, and it is actually a bit of food poisoning, as he laments at the part of it, right?
There's more gravy than grave about you, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, clever line. What's that?
It's full of stuff like that. But let's say it is that, and let's say you have that worry, right? As I know other people that have had health issues recently, where you suddenly come out the other end and you suddenly go, there was a moment where you didn't think you were going to make it, and you just think, what is my mark on the world? And what if the whole lot of it is just a guilt trip of kind of sitting there going, I'm going to die and I've left nothing behind. I've got all this money and I haven't even got a nice house. I haven't even got nice furniture. I've got nothing to show for it apart from money in the bank, which is absolutely useless to me at this moment in time. And so, yes, it still becomes egotistical in what you're doing, because you are more worried about what people think of you rather than what you are actually doing yourself. But, you know, that can be the motivator behind things sometimes, is that sudden realization you're going to die alone, cold, twisted, joyless, and I feel like I'm describing my old boss. You know, friendless, nothing, no mark on the world at all, yet you feel
still
that you're being successful. Eh?
You're still describing the boss there.
Yeah, I think I am. Yeah. So
but yeah, this is just now oh, sweetheart, you'd forgot my glass. I
love this. You come here to learn how to talk to women.
I think she's actually just taking it up to the toilet, so I don't know what I'm actually getting back here. Right, what was I going to say?
Apple juice.
Yeah. A bit warm. If it's all about the legacy, no, because who's he leaving the legacy for? Because it's
egotistical.
But if we're saying that, well, I got a lot of money in the bank, but other than that, I didn't contribute anything to society, and the money in the bank's no use to me now, he's dead. Even if it's sort of like giving it away to people, and they were sort of like dancing in the streets and going, oh, let's have Scrooge Day because he's so fucking wonderful, that's not benefiting him in any way.
No, it's not about benefiting him. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like, and it's a very interesting motivator for a lot of people about the idea. You know, what is it they say is, you know, the only things you can ever be guaranteed of in life is death and taxes, right? Yeah. So death is coming. We all know death is coming to us at some point. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen. We're not all cyclopses born with that curse, and quite a lot of people, in fact, actually, as societies, we're bloody useless at dealing with it. You know it's going to happen, and yet we still deal with it very badly. If it's in the right order as well. It was it Anne Rice died last week? Now, she's a great creative force taken off this earth, like David Bowie was. Great creative force taken off this earth. She was 80. It wasn't, you know, she had the tragedy of losing a child, you know, early on. I can't remember. I think a child was about 10 or something like that when a child died. That's the wrong order. That's where things, you know, you can understand why things go. But when parents are older and you lose parents that are older, you should be able to get over it easier because it's in the right order. But we don't. We're still terrible for it. We still kind of go, no, she was only 80. It's like,
yeah,
you know, that's quite a good age. So we do have this concept of what are we leaving behind, even though it means nothing to us. You know, I'm all in favour of planning your own funeral and having the wake before you actually die. I love the idea of that, especially for terminally ill people, is plan your own funeral, have the wake whilst you can hear all the nice things that people are saying about you, because afterwards you're not going to know. So
it's a bold assumption that people would actually be saying nice things, though. I suppose they would have to if you were there. Yeah, because she's still there. I mean,
yeah, you can almost guarantee it that way, can't you?
Yeah, I suppose that is a nice way of looking at it. I mean, I think what Scrooge should have done, and if this story was more realistic than it actually is that on Christmas morning, he would have woken up and thought, right, well, I've still got my money, I've still got my health. I'll give Bob Cratchit an extra couple of shillings a week just so that he can run the place without me.
Yes.
And then I'm going to sort of like blast through the remainder of the money that I've got on hookers and blow.
Yes.
Just to see, one, how many hookers I can get through during a day, how much blow I can get through during a day. Yeah, it would have been a completely different story, a completely different ending. But it would have been, God bless them.
I'm going to agree with you there. I think for me, the tale should be, pay your staff a living wage so that their family aren't starving because they're working for you. Give them the trust that they can actually operate it. You've built the business up. You've got all the money in the bank. That's what your staff are there for. Look after your staff so that they want to actually run your business for you in a nice way, and then piss off to the Bahamas. Like you say, hookers and blow. It's your money. That's what you don't have to give all your money to the complete destitute. And that's funny what I was saying about the Michael Sheen thing, isn't it? Yeah, fine. Or as someone said, there should be no billionaires. Should never be any billionaires. 100 million is enough for anybody. You should get to like 99 million. And when you go to 100 million, you get a certificate that says, well done, you won at capitalism. And every other penny after that goes back into the economies.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I'm sounding curmudgeonly, but only just to be an arsehole, really. I really, really enjoyed the book. It was just so much fun all the way through. There were parts that were funny. The parts that were meant to be upsetting were genuinely upsetting. And the horror parts were absolutely scary. And I thought all of that worked really, really well.
It's a masterclass of writing. Without a doubt, it's a masterclass of writing.
When we last looked at Dickens on here, on The Signalman, we were both pretty harsh about what the fuck was happening in there and, why had he bothered? But with this one, thank God he bothered, because it was just, right, Tiny Tim. Right, and I'm not trying to do any more nonce jokes here or talk about his tiny crutch or anything like that.
No.
But is this an easy target? We've sort of like got the small cripple that's about to die.
Yeah, I think it's seeing the unseen, isn't it? I think because Dickens used to walk around London a lot and go into the poor areas, and I think what they used to call themselves, they didn't call themselves the middle classes, did they, in the Victorian times? I think they called themselves of middling income. And they used to live in the townhouses, and they used to have their own societies, and they were the ones that celebrated Christmas more than anyone else did. And they went about their own thing. And then he used to go and walk around the streets, and he used to go into the poor areas. And I think it was back then, no NHS, no social services, no one helping out the poor, bar charitable organisations. So you would have disabled children on the streets begging for money that people just walk past, or rode their hansom through a puddle that go on to, because the Victorians were just all cliche. That's all they were, So there'd always be these like wet, poverty-ridden, disabled children lying around the place picking pockets and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's an easy target for us now. Absolutely. You think about it, you go, I'm going to tug at the heartstrings, let's kill a child, right?
Yeah.
But back then, I actually think it was an unseen thing. I think it wasn't necessarily, he might have been trying a little bit, because he did do a lot of that social stuff within his entertainment. So maybe he was looking at that as these are the type of people that are unseen. You lot are not seeing children with disabilities, otherwise known as the Raspberry Kids. just not, you know, and not doing anything. They're just considered to be. It's like, I mean, it ties up, doesn't it, in the line that Scrooge says that the ghost of Christmas Present repeats back to him. Well, they better get on with dying then, so that they can be out of the way.
Yeah,
you know, and that is the attitude, isn't it? That he's having a go at, in a way.
I mean, it ties in. I've been doing some research into various things. One of the things that I've turned up today was that in the 1880s, the East End of London had got a child mortality rate of 50% for under fives.
Wow.
Which is just, it's unthinkable, really, nowadays. So I suppose, I'm completely out of touch with what would have been going on in 1843, because one's assuming that by the 1880s, they were sort of like trying to improve things a little bit.
Yeah, but it's shocking, isn't it, when you look 50% mortality rate just because you happen to be born into the poor.
Yeah,
that's dreadful, isn't it?
It's absolutely awful, yeah. But that said, the twats that are going around trying to get Scrooge's money, best sort of like saying, "Oh, what is it, Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?" And we're here to get. I don't trust them.
No. To me, they're like Amazon collecting charity money, and I'm probably going to get sued for this now. This is my controversial moment. I don't give to the charities when I'm asked by big companies. So, you know, that kind of like, oh, just add your change onto the ND. You know, when you're buying online, I don't mind buying off Amazon. Yep. I'll buy off Amazon, fine. You know, they're a big company. They're just doing what big companies do. But when you realize that when they collect for charity, they're not a charity. They're just a collection for charity. They're not making a donation on your behalf. They're making a donation from Amazon. And any donation that they make from Amazon can be written off against their tax. So you pay them 5 pence to round your charity up. To go for charity. Yes, the charity receives money, so therefore somebody is actually getting some good out of it. But it is very much like you said about Scrooge's motivations. The motivations for Amazon and all these big companies, because Domino's Pizza do it as well, it's going to be one of those. There are other big scum-sucking corporations out there.
But there are other big corporations, and some of them are scum-sucking. Yeah,
stealing,
but not necessarily the ones you mentioned. Yeah,
there's lots of them. You'll see them. You see it all come up. They all do it now. All of them do it now. Do you want to just round this up, and we'll give the rest to charity? Round it up to the nearest pound for the charity. Facebook do it. You know, they do this whole go and raise money. You know, when you get that, it's your birthday coming up. Do you want to raise money for charity? That money funnels through Facebook. It becomes a Facebook donation. That means they can write that off against Facebook's tax, against their profits. So it's one of those, and it takes money away from small charities because it's so easy to do it there that you stop doing it in other places. And I agree with you. I think those two characters in the modern day, when you're reading it from a modern point of view, are absolute virtue signaling characters that you have no idea how much the poor are going to get out of that. You know, I think it's 15%, isn't it? If you collect for charity, you only actually have to give 15% of what you collect.
This is.
Why do you think it's that high?
Yeah, Tracy's saying she doesn't think it's that high, and I think.
So I have a big thing. I'm a very charitable person, as you know.
As I said earlier, you're an incredibly charitable person. Yes.
But there are points when I don't get involved in certain charity things. I'm not like opposed to things like Children in Need or Comic Relief or any of that kind of thing, because they are entities within themselves. They are the charity themselves. It's when you get big corporations like Tesco's and Sainsbury's and Amazon and eBay and Domino's Pizza and all the come at me, all of you, that are collecting, that has the, whether they do or don't, it has the possibility that that's what they're doing with it. And they have the ability to actually just write that off against their billions and billions of pounds worth of profits every year against the hundreds of millions of pounds raised by their customers.
I'm not a huge charity lover. I don't really. I think I think some charities do good things, but yeah, I do worry that some charities are just lining their own pockets.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think if the big corporations that I'd mentioned before actually, instead of trying to gain every last bit of profit for their shareholders, actually paid their taxes fairly, half of these charities wouldn't need to exist in the first place.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So if Scrooge paid his tax, he wouldn't have to give to the charity. There you go.
Well, no, I mean, this is one of the things we don't think. There's never any suggestion that Scrooge is trying to sort of like diddle his taxes.
No, you're right there. But he would, because when he's measly, that's the thing about the big corporations. The big corporations are not paying taxes because they're evil. They're doing it because they can. So it's and that's their whole thing. So if he's measly and he is penny pinching at the time, then he would be looking for every loophole that it means that he wouldn't have to give as much over, because that's what they do. It's not being illegal, but there is a certain amount of tax avoidance that probably would have gone on. But I am making assumptions there just because of how measly he's been. So afterwards, when he becomes all, altruistic in order to leave his mark on the world, then maybe, he'll then start paying his taxes more fairly and being less, that whole kind of like, well, if I do this and then I can, was it Lewis Hamilton buys a private jet through a limited company so he can claim the VAT back? It's like, come on.
Right. I'm going to show my ignorance here, but who's Lewis Hamilton?
Oh, he's a Formula One driver. Amazing driver, amazing sportsman. Everything he's actually achieved, absolutely stunning. Though his accountancy leaves a little bit to be desired, as most of the big sportsmen do, to be honest with you. When
you say an amazing driver, does he sort of like, can he do forwards and reverse? Can he do parallel parking?
He can win an entire Formula One race and deliver pizzas for Domino's at the same time. That's what I mean.
That's not bad going then,
yeah, amazing driver.
Oh, I'm gonna.
But the funny thing is, isn't that exactly what the Christmas Carol does, though, doesn't it? You can read the Christmas Carol as this ghost story, Christmas. Oh, it's a bit of a charity thing, but the discussions that come off the back of it, because you notice things like those two characters that are collecting for and what does he whisper in their ear? Because you never actually find out how much he offers them.
He whispers in their ear, "Cock sex tonight." And
that's with interest.
Yeah. Last week I asked how many groups of people can we offend in one episode, and I think
gone for it in this one.
Yeah, we fucking have. Supermarkets,
businesses, corporations, go for the lot of it.
Absolutely love the story. It's been one of my favourite ones that we've actually looked at. It's just such a delight to go through it. One question I wanted to ask. We were talking a while back, not whilst we were on here, but we were talking a while back about what makes a Christmas story.
Yes.
Do you think there is anything in the syntactic structure of this that makes it a Christmas story? Or is it all in the semantics? Is it all tropes in the furniture rather than the...
In this particular case, it's the other way round. This story is what makes Christmas. Because in 1943...
1843.
That's right. 1918. It's inflation. Sorry. In 1843, and it's very noticeable in that he leans out of the window on Christmas morning and says, "Oi, hello, boy," like that. "Hello, boy. Go and buy me the turkey from the shop that's still open, because all the businesses don't close on Christmas Day because they weren't celebrating Christmas in 1843." So at the time when this book came out, it wasn't full of Christmas cliches and tropes. It was advertising something that was actually only celebrated by a minority of people. Because, was it the Victorian Society, I think, started in 1810. It was about 1830 when they started gathering Christmas stories together, because they were worried that Christmas was just actually going to disappear because people weren't celebrating it. And
I think it was 1841 when Prince Albert started bringing a tree in. People.
The royal family were actually using trees before that. Before Albert did that, funnily enough. But the whole thing with mistletoe and stuff, they actually went around the country and around Europe collecting old stories. Like the Brothers Grimm did when they were trying to bring all the fairy tales together. and published them. And there's that French fella as well. I can't remember his name, but he did it with the fairy tales as well. Well, that happened in the Victorian time here.
Picault? Rousseau?
Like
no, not Rousseau.
Jean-Luc Picard.
Jean-Luc Picard, yeah.
Jean-Luc Picard went round and collected all the fairy tales from Europe, because that's where Little Red Cap is mainly is known from. But they did that here. The Society of Antiquities did it. They went and got all these traditions. They went off places. So things like mistletoe, for example, was just some story that they gathered from I think it was up in Newcastle or Northumberland. And it just got put into the mix. And it's almost like they had this tombola of Christmas. And the Christmases that we celebrate now, the true tradition of that Christmas goes back to like the mid-1800s. And anything prior to that, because Oliver Cromwell's Puritans banned it at one point because it was too Catholic. So it
does have the word mass in it, so I suppose
it does. It has the word mass in it, and Christmas pudding as well was completely made illegal for almost 100 years. So it's like so this book, which was the first of his, I think Dickens wrote 5 Christmas books. Right. I think this was the first one. I can't quite remember. Sure, this is the first one. It's the most famous of them all, anyway. And it was this that made more people interested in celebrating Christmas. So it's the other way around. I think without this, you wouldn't have had great Christmas hits like Die Hard and Gremlins and and all that kind of stuff. The great traditional Christmas movies. So
Deck the Halls.
Deck the Halls. Yeah, exactly. All of them.
Bad Santa, yeah.
Bad Santa and Bad Santa 2. Great Christmas movies. And Krampus. Probably, all the other Christmas stories may never have come back to the fore because we weren't celebrating it. We weren't looking for reasons to not celebrate it. We wouldn't have had the whole kind of pagan revival trying to say it's the Christians that took it away from the pagans and the Romans that did this kind of festival and all that kind of stuff. And this mixed history that entered the tombola in the Victorian times. So this is the original. This is the absolute original Christmas story, the original Christmas film, and it is anything else that is a pretender to the crown against this. These are the shoulders that all the other this is the shoulders that everyone stands on.
I mean, I've been looking at a couple of bits where 1841, yeah, Christmas trees, yeah, in Prince Albert, which I mean, you wouldn't want a piercing like that anyway, would you?
I was going to say, he brought trees indoors and invented piercings or something like that.
He was very keen on doing things with wood, is what I think we can take away from Prince Albert.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's see. Why did he write it? So, according to notes that I've got here on, I don't know where the fuck it is, he was inspired to write the book in 1843 because he was appalled by the abuse of women and child labourers going on in London's factories at that time. So, yeah, I mean, I know you were saying at the start he was doing this to earn money, and I'm fully 100% behind that. I think that's why he was writing this. If we walk away from this, though, with the notion that he was also doing it to raise awareness that there were all these abuses going on.
But that's incorrect.
But if we just if we sort of like imagine that he was doing it to raise awareness for all of that, in that case, he fucked things over big time, because if Christmas had just sort of like gone and died and we didn't celebrate it, in that case, surely the world would be a better place.
Yes.
Without all the...
Yes, you can definitely argue that. However, that what you've just read there, I don't know where you read that, it's actually incorrect. He wrote a Christmas carol, started writing a Christmas carol when he visited Manchester, when he came to Manchester and Preston there in order to have a look at the conditions that were going on in the factories. And he then wrote a pamphlet that highlighted the conditions. That after that was Hard Times that he wrote. I can't remember the name of the pamphlet, but he wrote a pamphlet regarding that. But at the same time as he was doing that pamphlet is when he started his work on A Christmas Carol. So A Christmas Carol wasn't written in order to highlight the problems within the factories. It was written at the same time as something else that he was doing in order to highlight the problems that were going on in the factories.
It says on this one, this is a slightly different one. The other one, I don't think it was Charles Dickens' own webpage. In fact, I'm fairly sure it wasn't.
No, he hasn't updated his blog for a while.
No, he hasn't. He's been quite lazy on that. First stones of the tale can be found in a visit Dickens made to Manchester a month before he began writing. He spoke at the city's Athenaeum on the 5th of October. As Dickens' biographer describes, Dickens dwelt on the terrible sights he had seen among the juvenile population in London's jails and doss houses, and stressed the desperate need for educating the poor. This occasion seems to have put into his mind the idea for a Christmas Eve tale which should help to open the hearts of the prosperous and powerful towards the poor and powerless, but which should also bring centrally into play the theme of memory that, as we have seen, was also so strongly associated with Christmas for him. So That was from his biographer, Michael Slater.
Yes, like I say, so it was at the time when he was writing. The pamphlet, I was just reading it there. I was trying to find the name of the pamphlet that came out of it, and it was something like an appeal to the people of England or something like that.
Catchy fucking title.
Yeah, it was a pamphlet. It was actually a piece of journalism that he was doing rather than being a. There you go, 20,000 times the force of a government pamphlet. But he was. It's funny enough because I was in the run up to this. I've watched a number of documentaries on Dickens, and there was a really good one on the other night on the BBC, which was Griff Rhys-Jones did it.
Right.
Where he went around and he was doing a lot of this stuff, and he was going off to the historians and talking about it. So that was very fresh in my mind. In that, because if you watch the film The Man Who Invented Christmas, for example,
right.
Darn good film. I'll be watching it sometime this week because it makes me feel very, very Christmassy. It leads you to believe that it was more 6 weeks. He decided he wanted to write a Christmas book, because he could make money out of it and all that kind of stuff, which essentially is what he was doing. But the deals he made meant that he didn't make as much money as he thought he was going to, because Dickens loved doing lavish Christmas parties. He loved the idea of celebrating Christmas. But it was, like I say, he started work on it long before the film really talks about it. It makes it, the hypocritical stories of, I think it was like 6 weeks between him writing it and it going into publication.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Where actually, when you look into it, no, he was making notes on this when he did the Manchester visit and when he was writing this pamphlet. Then after the pamphlet, because that's the strange thing about Hard Times. When you read the pamphlet, which is all about unionization and people coming together in order to take on the bosses because of the bad conditions. And then you read Hard Times, which kind of ends with this idea of, maybe we should just all get on. Don't worry about the unions. We should all just be nice to each other. And between all that comes the Christmas Carol. So, it does highlight it. It does highlight the idea of charity. It does highlight the idea of questioning your position within a society and what whether or not you can help others out in that society. And also, like Ben Elton once said, is he helps homeless charities not because he wants to help the homeless. He just doesn't want them he doesn't want to step over them as he's coming out of his really expensive restaurants.
Yeah.
So you get that kind of kindness through selfishness in a way. It's so the outcome is still the same at the end of the day. Homeless people are being homed and helped. But he's doing it so that he doesn't have to deal with them when he's coming out of his expensive restaurant. Still goes to an expensive restaurant, which is fine. I think that's what the balance is, isn't it? Social capitalism, I think you can call that.
Yeah, selfishness disguised as altruism. Yeah.
Yes. Which is Scrooge to an absolute T.
What are we reading next week then?
Well, here we go. I was looking through some lists and I was trying to decide. I thought, shall we do a review of everything we've done so far this year, our favourites and not so favourites, for a year?
Sliver Toronto.
Well, that's because it suddenly became very easy because it was like, I think it might be The Open Door and
yes.
Orinoco's Castle or whatever it's called.
Roy Castle, yeah.
Roy Castle. And then I thought, I was looking through things and I thought, how about Canterville's Ghost by Oscar Wilde? The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde.
Canterville Ghost, right?
Because we're not read in the Oscar Wilde yet, have we?
No, we haven't.
No.
Brilliant. Right, I'm looking forward to that, mate. I'm looking forward to that. If anybody's sort of like managed to stay awake throughout all of this, in that case, subscribe, like, share with friends, send money, whatever it is that you need to do to make us feel loved, because we need to feel loved. Thank you for listening. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, absolutely. I'll second that. Merry Christmas, everybody. Any suggestions for stories you want us to read, we'll go for that one as well. But have a great Christmas. Enjoy. Get drunk if you're over 12, and just have a great time. And you too, have a great Christmas, Ash.
You too, mate. Have a good one.
See you now. Bye.
Bye.